Well, hello folks, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. You're very welcome to the programme. And we're continuing here at Highlands Farm. And you can see one of the goats because he's eating the hedge, as you can see. But we're not here to talk about goats. We're here to talk about a fort. What are we looking at here, brother?
Right, Mark, well this is an old Celtic fort. Dating back to very earliest days, probably 300-400 years AD.
My goodness.
And this is a very unusual fort. Most Celtic forts in Ireland are round. This is a square fort, and we don't know what the significance of that is, but we think it might be slightly older than most of the round forts. And this would have been an old Celtic settlement, so they would have had a village here, and there would have been a community, and there would have been houses, and you can see it's sort of raised bank around the sides, so they had a little bit of protection. Now what's interesting on this site, we're at the top of a hill, but this site has a natural fed spring, so there's water coming up here all the time at the top of this hill from the natural springs. That's obviously why they wanted to come here. They had water that was coming up through the ground. And from this site here, we're on a good viewpoint looking over all of Lough Erne, right across all of Fermanagh, and even beyond into County Donegal. And from this fort, you can see potentially another 14 other Celtic forts. So they were all strategically lined up so that they could see each other, and then of course by smoke signals they could communicate and let each other know what was happening, because in those days the biggest threat that the Celts faced was from the Vikings, who came from Scandinavia and Norway. And they would have come on their long boats around the Atlantic Ocean and at Ballyshannon up into the Lough Erne, and travelled up the loch, and they would have raided, pillaged, taken sheep and slaves. And so these Celtic forts were very strategic in communicating any danger and allowing people to protect themselves and to get away from the Vikings that would come. And then if you travel further up towards Enniskillen, you would see the Devonish Island, and the monastery that was built there in around 400 AD by the followers of St. Patrick, who brought Christianity to Ireland, and they established a monastery. They built a beautiful round tower. The significance of the round tower was that whenever the Vikings would come, they would have a look out, they would see there was danger coming, they would see the smoke signals from the other Celtic forts, and they would gather up all the precious possessions they had, and for them it was mainly the scriptures, because they were copying the Bible, and they would bring it all up into the tower, and way up into the top of the tower they put food and all their precious things, and they would go up there and close the door and pull the ladder in. The door into the tower is about 15, 20 feet, 25 feet off the ground. Close the door, and of course it reminds of that scripture in Psalms, the Lord is our high tower.
Absolutely.
So that's a bit of history back in the old Celtic times.
Fantastic. And I'm sure they would have took not only sheep, but they would also have took goats as well.
They would take our goats, yes. Our goats would have been taken, but I think the main thing they would have taken would have been people.
And people for slaves.
For slaves, and of course they're very ferocious people, the Vikings. And so they were feared, and they came up in their long boats. Of course, later on, thankfully, the gospel was brought to the Vikings and Scandinavia, and then they became Christians. So that's what civilized the people, and that was, of course, what happened to Ireland too before Patrick.
And a lot of people don't realise it, but it was the Vikings that came to Normandy. The Norsemen, the Normans, and then the Norman invasion of England, 1066. And then, of course, Pope Adrian IV, I think it was, actually sent the Anglo-Normans over here to bring the Celtic Church into line with the Roman Church.
That's right. So we go back. So
it's a massive history.
It's a lot of history, and it goes back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, the Celtic Church was a very Bible-based church. They loved the scriptures. They preached the gospel, and they had that for over 600 years until around about 1100, whenever they came under the Catholic Church. I think eventually somewhere around Whitby in England, and they finally. But the Irish Celtic Church was always separate, and they sent missionaries all over Europe. And even today, you can go out to even places in Switzerland and you'll see some of the Irish Celtic missionaries that brought the gospel. So we have a great heritage and a great history that we all need to cherish and remember. And remember that the gospel that changed people's lives in those days can do the same
Still
today.
changes people's lives today. Absolutely. Well, I have a wee bit of bad news for you, because I think the Vikings must have come back, because there's no sign of your goat.
Oh dear, we're not going to get him.
It has disappeared. So, but there you go. So thanks for watching, folks, and God bless.